Well, size matters for residents in San Marco.
They are pushing back against the large-scale construction project they say will just destroy the neighborhood charm.
On Your Side's Eliza Powell tells us about this new campaign.
If you drive around San Marco, you may have seen these signs dotting the lawns of the homes here. Residents have started Right Size San Marco to campaign against the massive size of developments coming to the area.
Most of this will be leveled.
We're trying to keep the inherent character of San Marco.
Right Size San Marco's main focus is Park Place at San Marco, an apartment complex that will be built on part of the South Jacksonville Presbyterian Church property.
Signs were posted around the property for rezoning, and so everybody was kind of curious of what was happening.
The resident group is concerned the 4-story complex and garage will cause traffic and overcrowding problems, especially because it's across from the new Publix.
There's already been an issue with traffic cut through. We have a lot of development going on in the area.
But the group wants to make one thing clear.
We're not against apartments. We're not against anything really.
Their motto, "Let's get it right," is about building the right size developments to enhance the neighborhood.
We want to see a nice transition from a single resident neighborhood into more commercial or multifamily housing.
Not cast a shadow on its charm.
A town hall meeting will be tomorrow night at 6 at the South Jacksonville Presbyterian Church right down the road here. Now, the project developer will be there, and the community is hoping to have a conversation about what developments will best be right here in San Marco. Live in San Marco, Eliza Powell, First Coast News, On Your Side.